topic that I want to really share with you. But someone asked me while we were up at the Dargah, what's the relationship between our Sufi lineage and Islam? Is that? Yeah. No, I know who it was. Still you, yeah. You know, Nasruddin, he goes into the bank and he wants to cash a check. And you know, he says he shows it to the teller, and she says, I need proof of identification. He takes a mirror out of his pocket. And he says, yep, that's me.
Can't remember that one.
We all, as we become aware, connect or not connect with a thirst that happens to us all the time. We're looking for something. We keep looking outside of ourselves. We feel, oh, if I get an education, if I meet the right person, if I have enough prosperity, if the conditions I live in are good, if the weather is nice, if it's not humid, or we get up in the morning, we brush our teeth for some reason. You know, we have a meal for a reason. All of it motivated by an inner desire. And when you look for the root of that desire, that's where you'll find the purpose of life. And that's what mysticism means, to make mysticism no longer a mystery, to solve what is that thirst for. And we have to finally wake up and come to our senses and realize what we're looking for is our very self. We in a confused way think that if the world would just now change to what we want, then we would be happy. Inayat Khan says very clearly, he says, this is an inexperienced expectation. He uses those words. It's an inexperienced expectation. Profound happiness, if you want to use let's put the word happiness as the placeholder. It has to be a happiness which is no longer based on circumstance. Because if it's based on circumstance, it's going to come and go. And we're thirsty for, if you'd like to call it, limitless happiness, limitless freedom. And when you search inside, you may find that that essence of your being is by nature limitlessly free, with no beginning and no end. And so for me, for my teacher, for my teachers, for my lineage, Sufi is that search. So that can't be confined to any particular form. It can use every form. The Sufis love forms. Look, we just danced. Now, if somebody walked into our group, they'd think, well, Sufis are people who kind of dress colorfully, a little hippie style, you know, and they like to sing and dance and have a good time and hold hands and be affectionate and so on. If they saw our group.
And they pee in the woods.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Unlike the bears.
Unlike the bears. So then you have to understand, well, what is the association with Islam? So this thread of mysticism has been going on from the beginning of time. And, you know, if you want to study guitar, here it is, go learn, see you later. Or, hey, why don't you find a teacher? It's a time saver. You know, it saves a lot of time. Oh, here, try this lesson, do this lesson. Well, mysticism is the same way. Because it's not just technique, but even when you're studying with a musician, you learn about the essence of music, and the essence of feeling and what it is that wants to be expressed through music. And so there's a lineage from person to person to person, passing this down. Now, if we're wise, we're going to look for the people who have the really awakened condition, who are fantastic, because they'll be able to really give us the finest message. Now, all of us here have had experience in life, and we, in our turn, can be guidance for someone who doesn't have as much experience. But we want to find like spectacular guides. And the prophets of the world's religions have been them. Yes, religions formed them around them, after them, but they brought a message that was spectacular, but also for a time and place. So there's both things there. There's culture, there's language and form of the place, and then there's an inner message. And so these lineages of mystics, called Gnostics, called many different names, centered around Prophet Muhammad. They carry that mystic message after his passing, which, if you study the history of Islam, much of his message got confused by power struggles, and his family was murdered, and then his grandchildren were murdered, and I don't need to, this isn't a lesson in the history of Islam, but there were a group of people who continued to carry something of the essential message that he brought. In the 10th century, those mystics were called Sufi. The name Sufi didn't show up till the 10th century. They don't know the root of Sufi, but we have a lot of guesses. Sophia, wisdom. Safa, Arabic for purity. Suf, meaning that garments in the 10th century, I would imagine then they wore a rough wool, because Suf is a rough wool. So that's how the name came about. So now, I drove here with my friend Ahad in a Toyota. So the Toyota was our vehicle. Zikr, it's a vehicle we're using. Dances, they're a vehicle. Meditation, it's a vehicle. But it's not the destination. So if I was attached to the vehicle, the religion, the form, I'd still be sitting in the car with Ahad. I wouldn't come into the retreat. You follow me? Yeah. So Sufis have nothing against form. They love form. And in fact, even Prophet Muhammad said, seek wisdom unto China. So meaning, wherever you could find it, don't get stuck, So, but here's, just to put a cap on all what I've said, this is 1916. Hazrat Inayat Khan, he's come to the West. Now he's been in the West almost 6 years, and he's still unfolding. How do I share this universal message? It's so hard, because everyone wants to grasp onto form. You look at his robe, he's a this, or he's wearing a this hat, and so on, So he starts the Sufi order. And now there's a scholar, a Muslim, Englishman named Muhammad Marmaduke Pickthall. He's I believe he was the first translator of the Quran into English. So a distinguished gentleman. And he writes this letter to Pir Murshid Hazrat Inayat Khan. He says, I've come across a great many Sufis in the East, and I've read a great deal of Sufi literature from early times, and I've never yet heard of any Sufism which was not definitely Islamic. nor any Sufi which did not accept the Quran as the final revelation. That is why I was led to believe that in joining a Sufi community, I was associating with Muslims of my own religious faith. Is the Sufi order really Muslim, or to put it in the straightest terms, Mohammedan? So good, the question's clear. Yeah? Here's Murshid's answer, Inayat's answer. To a Sufi, revelation is the inherent property of every soul, which has worked through all stages of the world's evolution and developed in every state of individual evolution. It is to a Sufi an unceasing flow of the divine stream which has neither beginning nor end. Our order is composed of truth-seeking people who are not in any way obliged to give up their faith or belief, give up the faith or belief they have, nor to accept a certain faith or belief, nor, if they have none, compelled to adopt one. Pretty clear?
Pretty clear.
Okay, yeah. It reminds me, he tells that one of his students came up to him and said, Murshid, I don't really believe in God. And so Inayat says, tell me about the God you don't believe in. I probably don't believe in him either. So, one thing I'd like to try to approach tonight in sharing with you is the paradox between the idea or the feeling that essence of you, essence of me, essence of everything, it's universal. It has no beginning, it has no end, it has no location, it has every location. You know, in another language, if I said to you, where was the altar of God, what would you say?
In the heart.
In the heart, I like that answer. But then I'm looking for the other answer.
Everywhere.
Everywhere. Which, as it turns out, what a paradox that, since we say in the heart, that means somewhere in the center of our being, the whole universe exists. Even though we experience ourselves living in this skin-bound vehicle, in this, you said in the heart, wherever that is, you know, in the heart, in our heart, it's the whole universe. How do you figure that? I mean, how do you negotiate that? Right. And then and I agree. And I also recognize that I'll say in the heart, like you have, and like many of you had, but I realize that if I go searching for that, it's hard to locate because it's everywhere. Or nowhere, or everywhere. Whichever word frame you want to put on it, where is it? Oh, it's in the heart. Where's your heart? Where's the answer? Where, you know, do you... I agree, it's in the heart. But, okay, so now, looking at life that way, why would you make a relationship with God? It's very paradoxical, isn't it? I mean, we're in trouble, folks. What are we going to do now? Our very self. It's our very self. Here's Inayat solves this in a very lovely way. I want you to, I could say it in my own words, but I thoroughly enjoy reading his words on it. Here we go. I used to carry around a satchel of little pieces of paper. Now they're all here. Here it is. He says, the friend who is a friend in life and a friend after death, in pleasure and in pain, in riches and in poverty, one upon whom one can always depend, who always guides rightly, who gives the best advice, that friend is hidden in one's own heart. One cannot find a better one. Who is this friend? One's own being, one's true inner being. That friend is the origin, the source, and the goal of all. But the question arises, if that friend is one's own being, then why call them a friend? Why not call them oneself? The answer, you want to know the answer? Yes. Me too. Listen, he's very tricky in this. Very good answer. It's beautiful. The answer is that no doubt this friend really is one's own being, but when the greater self is compared with the present realization, one finds oneself smaller than the drop in the ocean. One cannot very well call that friend ourself until we have forgotten ourself. Until we are no more ourself. Unless one has arrived at that state of perfection, one had better be quiet and not insolent, talking about that which one has not yet become. You like it?
Wow.
Say that again.
He's asking you to read it again.
Which, the last part. One cannot very well call that friend oneself until one has forgotten ourself. I'm trying to take the gender out of it, so if there's too many ourselves and themselves, and, just adjust, okay? I just don't want to say himself, because it's just, it doesn't work for me, It probably doesn't work for some of you. One cannot very well call that friend oneself until one has forgotten oneself. So he's talking about different selves, Right now, when I say myself, I think, Shabda, age 66, blah, blah, blah,
Ego.
The thought of something which is transitory, interdependent, and insubstantial, which really it's not fixed. I better read this first before I go to that point. I'm getting too off the track here. One cannot very well call that friend oneself until they have forgotten themselves, or ourself, until we have forgotten ourself, until we are no more ourself. Until and unless one has arrived at that state of perfection, one had better be quiet and not insolent, talking about that which one has not yet become, which is not your experience. So he's suggesting we be a little careful and not talk about our concepts, talk directly from experience. So, okay, but now we're still in a quandary, because now what are we supposed to do? But did you want to say something, Waduda?
Isn't that so similar to what we're working with in our meditation practice? That little veil of ourself and that moment when we somehow transcend, but as you were saying to Asha, but if you're conscious of it, you're not in it. But that friend.
Okay. I put this quote on a flyer for an upcoming retreat, and then someone asked me where it was from, and I thought, oh, what a good quote, where did that come from? This is Inayat too, so yeah, this is just different perspectives of the same thing we're saying. Pure Mershid Hazrat Inayat Khan, the soul is an undivided portion of the all-pervading consciousness. So that's to say that the soul by itself is nothing but everything. Okay. Now he goes on to say, it is divided because it is undivided, because it is the absolute being. And that's a confusing word, because absolute sounds like it's not moving, but you can be sure the absolute being is a verb, not a noun, because it couldn't be a noun, because there are no nouns. Being. And, okay, I'll go on, just read what it says, sorry. It is completely filled with the whole existence. The portion of it that is reflected by a certain name or form becomes comparatively more conscious of the object reflected in it. That's our conundrum. Right? We're not seeing the big picture, the continuity. So, let's assume that whether we know it or not, this feels good. You know, this sense that we have an essence. It makes us feel alive. Do you feel alive? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's associated with an I. You know, I feel alive. Okay. So it looks to me now, because of my familiarity with my surroundings, that the I that I'm feeling is the local I. You know, this local thing. We'd all agree that, take my legs away, still around. Arms. What? Oh, there goes my whole body. Oh, hey, I'm still here. Mind. Now, oceanic is happening. Now we're in the oceanic self, or the limitless self. And this is the journey from smallness to the essence. So, when we look at this path that we call Sufi, it somehow makes a combination of this first view, which is completely non-dual. Do you follow me when I say non-dual? There's no subject and object. In actuality, there is no subject and object. There can't be. Even scientifically, if we took the time to look at everything scientifically, you'd see there's no beginning, there's no end. Everything is moving. You know, some of the classic examples, we go down to the Rio Grande for a field trip. Here we go, and we go, look, there's the Rio Grande. Okay, now I'm going to ask you the same question. Which part is the Rio Grande? What makes it the Rio Grande? Well, the water. It's a river. Come on, so it's the water, but wait. It's not standing still. The water's moving. So wait, there goes. Wait.
The river.
The Rio's. It's granding. You know. It's passing us by. But that water needs banks. Okay, well, is that the river? It needs land near it so that the banks don't disappear. It needs a sky. It also needs our Earth spinning to create gravity, the moon to do its thing. Well, that happens to be related to the sun that's doing its thing inside of the Milky Way. And then now we've found out that there's a as far as we know so far, 499.99 billion other galaxies also doing their thing. And that all makes the Rio Grande the Great Rio Grande. It's not separate. They're not separate. They're inseparable. They're interdependent. And in that way, you know the word reified, to make something solid? Nothing is substantial. Nothing can be reified. But our nature to understand is to reify. And we reify a self. A sense of I based on the local I. You know, the closest I. It makes perfect sense, you know, and it makes that much sense that somehow all of us are confused in a way. You know.
Amazing.
Shabda, if we take apart all those parts, like you were giving us the example, so we know the Rio Grande isn't just the banks. We know it's not just the water. We know it's not just the moving. It's not just the rocks. But so is it the same to say that it is all of that together? I mean, is it everything, all of those things that we would describe it put together that make it the Rio Grande? Or is it even bigger?
Well, which thing? Well, there's no end. There's no ending place. There's no ending place in describing what goes into making the Rio Grande. Right now, in our description, we're out at the 500 billionth galaxy to establish. So we're pretty wide. You follow me? No, I didn't think so. Okay, so I'll try to say it a different way. Everything. There's two different qualities here. One is nothing is standing still. So that's the first point. The Rio Grande isn't standing still, and even those things which I call this my hand. Okay, so in other words, my hand, and it looks pretty much like my hand was the moment before when I said about it. But wait a second, it's changing, right? So yes, I agree with you in a conventional sense. It looks pretty much like this for the last while. I mean, it's changed, you know, last year. 2 years it looks pretty different, and in geologic time it's changing like boom, you know. But okay, but what I want you to see is that it's not solid. It's not reified. It's moving. It's changing, and everything in the universe is a verb. Let's say it that way. There are no nouns. But then you can also understand the same principle by seeing that everything is interdependent. So the two different principles. One is nothing, that people think nothing standing still and substantial, and the other is that there is no boundary. And if there were a boundary, then we couldn't say everything is one. We couldn't, because there would be two. But one doesn't mean uniformity. So that's a common confusion. One doesn't mean everything's the same. If anything was the same, there would be two. We'd have a problem. We got a problem. There's two of the same things here. There's no duplication. Your ever becoming is completely unique. It's never been like this before. It's never going to be like this again. We'll never have this shape of pretty clothing and nice people. It's moving. It's changing. The world is moving along. It's spinning, and it's singing the song of "I was a hidden treasure and I wish to be known." Everything. Because if we look back at ourself and our structure, how do we feel? We constantly come back to I'm using the word thirst. You might have a different word, a desire, a wish, an aspiration. we get hungry and we eat. Now there's also for different types of hungers, and then it satisfies it, and then we're still hungry, and then we're hungry again, or we're hungry for friendship, or we're and so on. But there's a root desire, and my suggestion is that root desire is the purpose of life, which is each cell's wish to awaken to itself, to know its own nature. And this is what in conventional terms would be called enlightenment, union. I like limitless freedom. Inayat Khan used spiritual liberty. And that kind of liberty of freedom, when you look now in a practical way, if you look at it practically, right now, our condition is based on circumstance. We're still subject to whether somebody likes us or not, on and on and on. Limitless freedom. Let's take, if we just imagine now, Lord Buddha, awakened. Is he going to go on a bummer if something bad happens? Just use your imagination. I don't think so.
Probably not.
Probably not. It's going to go, okay, this is how it is right now.
Yeah.
This is how it is. So naturally, it's paradoxical because we can experience suffering and be deeply moved and cry and still be free. It may be difficult to comprehend, but this is the paradox that we're in. So we can live life fully, be passionate and work to change things and be relaxed, completely relaxed with what's arising at every moment. And so the spiritual path becomes the interplay between emphasizing your thirst, working, diligently and with strength and passionately, and then relaxing with whatever arises.
Oh, I was reading in the garden, and I can't remember what part, but Marshad Sam introduced some pure Goliath, and I think, I don't know if it was a reporter or somebody asked him something, he said, oh, now I need to go cry, or something like that. And but I mean, like he would, he cried, at least like how it was written, he would cry maybe frequently over something.
I know my music guru would cry on a dime. He'd hear a good note, he'd be crying,
And is it beauty?
It's everything.
Feeling, good job.
Just go to it now. You can just start crying. Come
Yeah,
on.
yes.
You can go anywhere. Where am I crying from? From beauty? Am I crying? Am I angry? How could you do this to me? How could I be you and you stick me in here and get me confused? What's the idea? We can cry. It's all there. Just for a moment, think about so much suffering. We probably just think about the people here. There's enough suffering to cry about. But now, the tremendous suffering going on our planet, and that's what we know about. I mean, if we have a planet, there's got to be other planets. I mean, how could we be so narcissistic? If there's 500 billion galaxies, come on. There must be other forms of life,
But to suffer over
And there's going to be suffering everywhere. But, there's apparent suffering, but suffering, the real suffering, is going round and round in a circle, looking for something which can't be found, until we finally start looking within. But it's very paradoxical, and here's how the Tibetan mythology tells it. In the inner world, there's a being called Chinrezig, which means the Bodhisattva of compassion. Bodhisattva means awakened purity. So a being who's in the purest state of freedom, if you're in that state of freedom, naturally your natural wish is to free everything, because everything is yourself. I want to wash my hands because my hand. So you're my hand. I mean, I'm your hand. I mean, it's not a me and you. But so Chinrezig, he's working to she doesn't. Some cultures it's Kuan Yin. They're all the same. But in the Tibetan mythology, he wants to relieve suffering, and he's not doing so good. And he cries. And most of you know what happens when the two tears touch the ground. The Taras take birth. Yeah. Okay, so let me. I haven't gotten to the next place I want to get to with you. So if you stick with me a little bit, I love this. I want to read you this of Inayat Khan. It's so delightful because it will make you smile, especially asking about what is Sufism. Here he goes. He says, the ones who stand outside of Sufism are always confused as to the Sufis' attitude towards God.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
They cannot make out whether the Sufis are worshippers of God or worshippers of self. Whether Sufis claim themselves to be God, whether they are idolaters, or whether they worship the formless God. The ones who wonder like this have some reason for it, because when they see that in this world there are believers and unbelievers, that there are some who worship God and some who do not, they cannot understand the attitude of the Sufis. I hope somebody's recording this. No? Is the film camera going? Oh, good. Oh, that's good, because my recorder's not working. All right, there you go. Sorry. The ones who wonder like this have some reason for it, because when they see that in this world there are believers and unbelievers, that there are some who worship God and some who do not, they cannot understand the attitude of the Sufis. They can't decide whether Sufis are beginners on the spiritual path or whether they've arrived at the goal. If they call them beginners, they cannot prove this to themselves because of the Sufis' personalities which radiate God. And they can't call them the ones who have arrived at the height of spirituality. If they call them that, they think, how can Sufis, who are supposed to be God-realized, be so childlike as to worship God in the same way as everybody else does? And when they say that they do not see any importance in the worship of form, that they are above it. Moreover, he goes on, moreover, there are some attitudes of the Sufis which very much shock the religious, the orthodox, for the realization of the Sufis cannot always be held back. They may try to do so, but sometimes it will leap out, and then one begins to doubt whether the Sufis are really worshippers of God, or whether inwardly they feel differently towards God. The Sufis, therefore, are a riddle to those who cannot understand them fully, to those who stand outside of Sufism, for they do not know what the Sufis believe and what they do not believe. And I think at this point it's important to say we don't place that much importance in belief. It has its value, but if you have a sense that belief is the goal, it's like standing on a stairway, and you're not going to go anywhere. You step on the step and you stay on your belief. But Rumi himself says that we want to smash our beliefs on the rock of truth. So the beliefs should keep growing. They need to keep growing. But here's the place that I wanted to go with you, because Inayat Khan helps us in this capacity to practice life as the lover with a beloved. To have a relationship with... Now, here's the word he puts in. He doesn't say have a relationship with God. He says have a relationship with your God ideal. And why would we make that distinction? Because our conception, our way of relating to the unseen totality will evolve. So, if I use the word God, what does it mean? We have so many habits from our upbringing, from our culture. Again, I asked you before, now which direction, if you want to pray to God, which direction are you going to go? It's confusing. I'm confused, you confused? Which direction? You look up? Dear God. Well, wait. No, wait.
I think it's in a spiral.
No. Good. Whatever you think is good. I'll try it out.
Ideal.
Try it out. Try it out. So he talks about, he makes a few points first. That we know intuitively there is no such thing as the lover. There's only the beloved. Right? And Rumi says it in his poetry, the lover is just a veil, the beloved is all in all. He says, he gives another example, it's like a line, a line, the beloved on one end, the lover on the other, but it's the same thing. But you can look at it this way. If we are honest, in our current condition, we feel a common wound of separation. You with me?
Yeah.
It's a common wound. We all feel that way. So, from that stage, if we're honest, we want to find a way to get to that experience of unity, of union, of bodhisattva, of unity, of dharmakaya, of all-pervading reality, of God. So, the Sufis wisely have recognized that through love, through the path of the lover, when it's practiced well, it gets you off your own dime. You think of the beloved. And it helps you let go of the false construction of a small reified thing that's just a limited part of your being, which is vast. So, if you go back to the time when you may have fallen in love, and if you can remember how intoxicating that is, and how little you thought about yourself, you're not even hungry. It's just like, you're so happy. It's just so fulfilled. Okay, so now that gives you an inkling that we want to make a relationship, and now we have to start to use our intuition and our feeling to, you could say, make our God ideal. It's already there intuitively. We feel something grand, but okay, so now we start to, so the first stage on this path to God is, in this approach, is to connect with our God ideal. Okay, so even using that word, the God ideal, it's so easy to make something that it's not, but to make a relationship with that which we feel is the essence and which is our essence. So, like we read that section on the friend, that friend, our very self. So we feel into that. So now we feel into, let's check into our God ideal together. What would be the qualities that you would feel of that which you want to direct your expression to as a lover to a beloved? My beloved. Tell me about it.
Compassion.
So compassion, would it be limited compassion? Unlimited, or maybe another way to say it, unconditional. It's raining all the time. Okay, what else? So, I'm sorry. Empathy. Yeah. So about the same, similar word. So similar. Yeah. So boundless. Oh yeah. Okay. So now we have something. Compassion is that So limitless compassion or unconditional. My beloved loves me all the time. I mean, that sounds good. I want to feel that. My own merchant Sam emphasized. He wanted to emphasize that, and he would quip at us all the time. Said, "Allah is your lover, not your jailer." Allah is your lover, not your jailer. I've heard that many times, and I'm telling you, and so I'm learning, like you. Okay. Oh yeah. Am I okay? Am I doing this right? Or, that's it. Are you watching me? All those kinds of human feelings, they're all there. So, and I want to insert this in here right now because this is important to understand the nature of the mind. I don't mean the nature, a mind in the thinking mind rather than the soul. I don't mean, not the way the Buddhists use the word mind. So, the nature of the mind is doubt. So even though it's so important, the breath, we could say that the breath invigorates the mind and the breath invigorates the body, but neither body nor mind are breath. But the nature of the mind is always going to be doubt. So you have to make friends with your companion doubt. You don't have to buy into it, but it's going to show up. You're going to be well along on your spiritual path, you'll be helping people, you'll have had tremendous experiences, then you'll go like, is this real? I don't know. Like, what? I don't believe it. And in the story of Lot, where the wife turns into a pillar of salt. So in that story, Lot represents the human soul. His family, his wife represents the mind. His two daughters are the result of the union of soul and mind, and they're called wisdom and bliss. The daughters get married. They're not part of the family. They're like the physical body and the breathing body. So when Lot has to go journey, when he's told by the angel, get out of town, he says, let's go, family. The sons-in-laws don't come. Because they don't get on, they don't really get to go on the whole journey. This body, this breathing thing, it's a temporary, it stays back. Okay, now they're traveling along. Wisdom and bliss, the two daughters, which are the union of mind and soul. So that was important. The soul by itself didn't make wisdom and bliss. It was union, mind, union of soul and mind. But then, so in the story she's told, nobody should look back. Nobody should have doubt. So then the mind has doubt and will have doubt, and it doesn't get to go on the whole journey. But wisdom and bliss go on the journey with the soul. So it's a beautiful description of the evolution to awakening. Okay, so we create a God ideal. So now, and we should also know, now that we have some sophistication in the psychological processes, that we're going to have a conscious God ideal, and we'll also have an unconscious God ideal. So the unconscious God ideal will likely look something like your mother or your father or your authority figures or, and so, excuse me. I'll give you a funny example. 20 years ago, I'm on, or 20, 30, I don't know, 25 years ago, I'm on retreat, and my retreat guy says to me, I want you to have darshan with the photos of your teachers. You know, Hazrat Inayat Khan and Murshid Sam. Like, well, that's a nice, that should be good. I like to do that. So I put up Murshid Sam, and we're having a nice old time, you know, the picture and me and communication, and then I put up Hazrat Inayat Khan's picture. And this is what it's like. No, at that moment I think, well, okay, it looks like I have a little work to do. So naturally, some part of my being has connected to authority, probably through the nature of my father, and I project that nature onto my guide, onto an icon. And if I'm going to project it on him, I'm going to project it on our God ideal. So now you see we have a conscious God ideal, and then we also have to do some navigating with the unconscious God ideal. Okay. A little bit longer. You okay? Okay. Okay. Once having made that first step on the path to God, now we become a devotee. And now we feel everything that's happening is happening at the hands of our beloved. So now our life becomes our teacher. So we learn how to, you could use the word surrender to life. You could say make friends with life. And when you use this word surrender, it becomes paradoxical because you think surrender means weakness. But completely to the contrary. When you surrender to life, you become strong and compassionate and able to serve. A great, great ability. So, and this is looked at from another point of view. Whether anything we said true or not, if we feel that our goal is limitless freedom, limitless happiness, then we could easily say that if something arises that disturbs us, it is the perfect teacher because we can't be limitlessly free until we've solved that reaction, until we've solved every reaction. So now you look at your life as the perfect teacher that you wanted, because it's going to bring you what you're still stuck on.
Definitely.
Yeah. But after a while, you make friends with life, and so, okay. Oh, my friend, how are you? Or my teacher, my beloved. See, so my God, at the hands of my beloved. So when you make that transition to see life being your teacher, now, like if I've said this before, if Murshid Sam walked in the room, we'd go like, Murshid, wow, so great to see you. Yeah. So when you can transfer the sense of your teacher being present onto the difficulties or opportunities that arise, now you appreciate that the teacher's come. Because when you're disappointed, the first thing you'll do is what? Watch your breath. Be disappointed.
Hold your breath.
You hold your breath and you breathe out. You have no vitality. You're going to have so little energy to go anywhere. Right? Right? Now think, oh, Murshid, it's so good to see you. My teacher came in the form of a difficulty. All right, so this is the second stage on the path to God. Third stage. You know, I'm kind of rushing through this now because I don't want to keep you too much longer. But in the third stage, it's quite glorious. Because now you're in a condition where everywhere as you look, you see God. Wow. You know, those of you who've read the words of Papa Ramdas, Murshid Sam's Hindu guru, you know, he's sitting in his hut meditating, and a completely disheveled sadhu comes to the doorway. He looks like he's a mess, he's crazy. And here's Ramdas. He looks up and he says, "Oh Ram," meaning "Oh God." You know, "Oh Ram, what a curious disguise you manifest to me in today." Or he would say, "Oh Ram, your play is so delightful." That same sadhu in the same story, he comes in and he sits down, and the sadhu's kind of very crazy. And he says, "Oh, you know, that water pot you have, I'll be needing that." And so Ramdas says, "Oh Ram, my entire life is devoted to thee and to thee alone. Everything is yours. Freely ask and freely take." And he gives him the water pot. And then he says, "Oh, that shawl you're wearing is so nice." He says, "Oh Ram, this is so fantastic." And he gives him his shawl. Finally, as he's telling the story, finally all he's got left is his underwear on. It was the last thing on was his glasses. And he says, "Oh, those glasses, I'll be needing those too." And he says, he gives him the glasses, and he said he knew that Ram was there for the test. If there was anything that he attached himself to, that would disturb his freedom. And he let everything go, and he said the amazing thing is then the next day his eyes were healed. He didn't need the glasses. And the next morning, you know, all his devotees came and they said, "Where is everything?" And then he said, "Well, you know, this crazy sadhu," and I gave him, and he says, "Oh, that rascal." He says, "No, it was Ram himself. They belonged to him, you know." Then they gave him, you know, they all bought a new water pot and a new shawl.